The stagecoach lurched to a halt with a groan that matched the desert wind's moan. Through the dust-caked window, Maeve O'Rourke glimpsed her destination, Dry River, New Mexico Territory. The year was 1886, and the town sprawled before her like a sun-bleached skeleton, its wooden buildings huddled against the vastness of the high desert. "End of the line, miss," the driver called down, his voice rough as sandpaper. "Best get inside quick, storm's brewing." Maeve gathered her worn carpetbag and stepped down onto the packed earth of Main Street. The wind immediately seized her traveling dress, whipping it against her legs. Red dust swirled in miniature tornadoes, stinging her eyes. She squinted through the haze at the ramshackle collection of buildings, a general store with peeling paint, a smithy belching black smoke, and what appeared to be the largest establishment, a two-story structure with Desert Rose Saloon and Inn, painted in fading letters above swinging doors. She pressed a hand to her bodice, feeling the crisp outline of the letter that had brought her west. County stamped, official-looking, promising a teaching position and modest salary. After months of closed doors in Boston, too Irish, too poor, too Catholic, this had seemed like Providence itself. The first fat drops of rain began to fall, mixing with the dust to create mud that splattered her boots. Thunder rumbled across the valley like 1,000 stampeding cattle. Maeve hurried toward the saloon, the only building showing signs of life through lamplight windows. Inside, the air hung thick with tobacco smoke and the yeasty smell of beer. Men in worn denims and leather turned to stare. Conversations died mid-sentence. A woman traveling alone was spectacle enough. A young woman with copper hair and Boston-cut clothes was something else entirely. "You lost, honey." A woman's voice cut through the silence. Behind the bar stood a handsome woman in her 30s, dark hair pinned high, wearing a burgundy dress that had seen better days but still carried an air of dignity. Her brown eyes assessed Maeve shrewdly but not unkindly. "I'm looking for the town office," Maeve said, lifting her chin. "I'm the new school teacher. I have a letter of appointment." The woman's eyebrows rose. "That's so I'm Rosa Delgado. I run this establishment." She gestured to a table near the stairs. "Sit, you look ready to blow away. Miguel," she called to a boy of perhaps 12. "Fetch Mr. Reed from the courthouse." Grateful, Maeve sank into the offered chair. The saloon resumed its low rumble of conversation, though she felt eyes tracking her movements. Through the window, she watched the storm gather strength. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the jagged peaks of the Sangre de Cristo Range. First time in the territories. Rosa set down a glass of water and a plate with cornbread. "Yes, I came from Boston by rail to Santa Fe, then by stage. Long way for a teaching job." Rosa's tone held a question. Maeve touched the letter again. Sometimes a long way is the only way forward. Rosa nodded slowly. "True enough, though I should tell you there's been no talk of hiring a teacher. The town council meets monthly, and there wasn't nothing about it at the last gathering." A chill that had nothing to do with the storm crept down Maeve's spine. "But I have the letter, the county seal." The saloon doors burst open. A man staggered in, fighting to close them against the wind. When he turned, Maeve saw he was colored unusual enough in Boston, even more so here. He wore a clerk's vest and carried a leather portfolio clutched against his chest. "Mrs. Delgado," he gasped. "Storm's turning ugly. We got maybe 10 minutes before—" A crack like cannon fire split the air. Through the window, Maeve saw the mercantile's porch roof peel away like paper. The wind howled triumph. "Everyone to the back rooms," Rosa commanded. "Away from the windows, Mr. Reed. Help me with the shutters." Chaos erupted. Men scrambled for cover. Glasses crashed to the floor. In the confusion, Maeve found herself pressed against the window. Fumbling with the latch, the shutter fought her, heavy and stubborn. Rain lashed sideways through the gap. "Leave it!" a man's voice barked close to her ear. Strong hands pulled her back just as the window exploded inward. She felt herself lifted, carried bodily away from the shower of glass. They tumbled together behind the bar, the man's body shielding hers from flying debris. For a moment, they lay still, breathing hard. Maeve became aware of details, the smell of leather and horse, the rope calluses on the hands that had grabbed her, the steady heartbeat against her back. "You hurt," the voice was low, controlled despite the chaos. "No, I don't think so." He helped her sit up, and she got her first clear look at her rescuer. Weather-beaten face, perhaps 35, with dark hair and eyes the color of winter sky. A day's worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. Everything about him spoke of hard use, from his worn trail clothes to the way he moved, economical and certain. "Cole Mercer," he said shortly. "You're the Boston woman." It wasn't a question. News traveled fast in small towns. "Maeve O'Rourke, and thank you." He grunted acknowledgement and turned to help secure the remaining shutters. The storm raged for another half hour, rattling the building like dice in a cup. When it finally passed, leaving only steady rain, the saloon looked like a battlefield. "Well," Rosa surveyed the damage with hands on hips. "We've seen worse. Miguel, get the broom. Gentlemen, drinks are half price for anyone who helps clean up." In the bustle that followed, Jonah Reed, the colored man Maeve had seen earlier, approached her. "Miss O'Rourke, Mrs. Delgado says you're here about a teaching position." "Yes." She produced the letter, now slightly damp. "I was hired by the county board." He studied it carefully, holding it up to the lamplight. His frown deepened. "Ma'am, I keep all the county records. There's been no authorization for a teacher, no allocation of funds, and this seal—" He rubbed his thumb across the wax impression. "It's similar to ours, but not quite right. See how the eagle's wing curves? Our seal has a straight line there." The floor seemed to shift beneath Maeve's feet. "That's impossible. I corresponded with a Mr. Josiah Finch. 3 letters back and forth. There's no Josiah Finch on the county board. Ma'am, never has been." The full weight of her situation crashed down. She was 2,000 miles from home with barely enough money for a week's lodging. No position, no prospects, no way back. "Someone's played a cruel joke," Reed said quietly. "I'm sorry." Cole Mercer had been listening from nearby. "Not a joke," he said. "Seen this before. Someone's running a game, probably collecting application fees from desperate folks back east." "You send any money?" "A small deposit," Maeve admitted, heat rising in her cheeks. "To hold the position." That's what they were after then. Shame burned hot. How could she have been so foolish? But the letters had seemed so official, the promise so perfect for her circumstances. Rosa appeared at her elbow. "You got anywhere to go, honey?" Maeve straightened her spine. She'd survived worse than this, the coffin ships that brought her parents from Ireland, the cholera that took them, the factory work that paid for night school. "I'll make my own way. I always have." "That's the spirit," Rosa said. "Tell you what, I need help with the books. My eyes aren't what they were. You know your numbers." "I have a certificate from Boston Normal School." "Fancy, room and board for bookkeeping, and we'll see what else turns up. Fair?" Before Maeve could respond, the saloon doors swung open again. A man entered, removing an expensive hat to shake off the rain. Everything about him gleamed, from his tailored coat to his polished boots. His smile was practiced, showing too many teeth. "Afternoon. All storm caught me on the road. I'm Silas Vane, with the Railroad Land Development Company." His gaze swept the room and fixed on Maeve. "And who might this lovely young lady be?" "The new school teacher?" someone called out, not unkindly. "Is that so?" Vane's smile widened. "How fortunate. The railroad has great interest in bringing civilization to these frontier towns. Education is vital to progress." He stepped closer to Maeve. "Perhaps we should discuss how the railroad might support your efforts. Miss..." O'Rourke. She kept her voice neutral, though something about the man raised her hackles. Delighted. You know, the territories need people of vision, people who understand that the old ways must give way to progress. Water rights, land use, mineral claims all must be modernized. His gaze flicked to Cole Mercer. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Mercer? Cole's expression could have been carved from stone. Depends on whose progress you're talking about. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vane's smile never wavered. Why, everyone's... Of course, the railroad brings prosperity to all, like it did to the Cheyenne, the Apache. Progress requires sacrifice, Vane said smoothly. But I'm sure a former cavalry scout understands that better than most. Cole's hand flexed, and Maeve saw Rosa tense behind the bar. The moment stretched taut as wire. Then Cole turned and walked out without a word. The doors swung behind him. Vane chuckled. Rough men, these cowboys. Useful in their time, but that time is passing. He touched his hat brim to Maeve. Miss O'Rourke, I look forward to furthering our acquaintance. After he left, Rosa spat into a brass spittoon. Snake oil in a fancy bottle? That one? What did he mean about Mr. Mercer being a scout? Maeve asked. Not my story to tell, but Cole's got history. Like most folks out here, done things that keep him up nights. Rosa studied her. You sure you want to stay? This ain't Boston. The territory's got ways of testing people. Maeve thought of the forged letter in her pocket, the cruel deception that had brought her here. But she also thought of the children she'd seen playing in the dust, the hungry look in their eyes that she recognized from her own reflection. I'm sure, she said. That night, she lay in the small room Rosa had provided, listening to rain drum on the roof. Through thin walls came the sounds of the saloon laughter, arguments, a fiddle playing a mournful tune. This wasn't what she'd planned, wasn't what she'd dreamed during those long nights in Boston, imagining a proper schoolhouse and eager pupils. But plans were like storm windows, useful until the real weather hit. Then you made do with what you had. Tomorrow she would start over. She would find those hungry-eyed children and teach them anyway, with or without official sanction. She would earn her keep and prove her worth. And she would discover who had forged that letter and why. The storm had blown her plans to pieces, but storms also cleared the air, scoured away the dust, revealed the bedrock beneath. Maeve O'Rourke would build on bedrock. The morning sun painted the desert in shades of gold and rust. Maeve stood on the saloon's back porch, watching a group of children chase lizards through the sagebrush. In the week since the storm, she'd begun teaching informal lessons at a corner table in Rosa's establishment, working around the saloon's quieter hours. Miss O'Rourke, young Tom Bennett waved from across the dusty yard. Mr. Mercer says he's taking us to Blue Spring today. Will you come? She'd seen little of Cole Mercer since their first encounter. He kept to himself, appearing in town only for supplies or ranch business. But the children spoke of him with the reverence usually reserved for folk heroes. I have lessons planned, she began, but Rosa appeared in the doorway. Go on, the older woman said. The children need to know their water sources. Besides, the account books can wait a day. Within the hour, Maeve found herself walking alongside a small procession toward the hidden spring. Cole led the way on his paint horse, while she and 7 children followed on foot. A Navajo girl named Nayeli brought up the rear, moving through the desert as if she were part of it. Stay together, Cole called back, and watch for rattlers. The path wound through red rock formations and stands of piñon pine. Despite the early hour, heat shimmered off the stones. Maeve's boots, made for Boston cobblestones, struggled with the sandy soil. City shoes, Cole observed, pulling his horse alongside her. You'll need proper boots if you plan on staying. I plan on staying, she said firmly. He studied her for a moment, then dismounted. Take the horse. I'll walk. I can manage. Didn't say you couldn't, but there's no prize for suffering. Anna, he called to one of the girls, show Miss O'Rourke how to mount proper. The child demonstrated, and soon Maeve sat awkwardly in the saddle, trying to find her balance. Cole adjusted her grip on the reins, his hands briefly covering hers. They were rough hands indeed, scarred and calloused, but his touch was careful. Relax, he said. Let the horse do the work. She knows the way. They continued in relative silence until the canyon walls began to narrow. Then, like a miracle, green appeared cottonwoods and willows clustered around a pool of crystal-clear water emerging from the rock face. Blue Spring, Tom announced proudly. Best water in the territory. The children immediately shed their shoes and waded in the shallows. Maeve dismounted, enchanted by the oasis. Dragonflies danced over the water's surface, and somewhere a canyon wren sang. The Navajo and Pueblo knew this place long before us, Cole said, coming to stand beside her. Spanish too. It's never run dry, not in living memory. Nayeli had found a flat rock near the spring's source. She placed her hand on it, then looked directly at Cole. Something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or shared knowledge. What aren't you telling them? Maeve asked quietly. Cole's jaw tightened. You're observant. I'm a teacher. It's part of the profession. He was silent for a long moment, then pointed to fresh wooden stakes driven into the ground upstream. Surveyor's markers. Vane's crew was here 3 days ago. But this is community water. Everyone depends on it. Not if someone files the right papers. Water rights are complicated out here. First in time, first in right unless someone's got a prior claim, or federal backing, or enough money to tie it up in court for years. That's why you brought the children, to show them what they stand to lose. Among other reasons. He watched the playing children with an expression she couldn't quite read. People fight harder for what they love than what they need. As if summoned by his name. Silas Vane appeared at the canyon mouth with 2 companions. One wore a sheriff's star pike. Maeve had learned, a man who spent more time in Vane's pocket than keeping peace. The other carried surveying equipment. Mercer, Vane called cheerfully. And the lovely Miss O'Rourke. What a pleasant surprise. His gaze swept over the children. Having a swimming party. Teaching a geography lesson. Maeve said before Cole could respond. The children are learning about water tables and spring formation. How progressive. Education is so important. Vane gestured to a surveyor. As is progress, we're mapping potential routes for the railroad spur. This spring would make an ideal water stop. Railroad needs permission to access community resources, Cole said evenly. Oh, but is it community resource? Vane produced a paper from his coat. I've been researching the old Spanish land grants. Fascinating reading. It seems this particular spring may have prior claims that predate the town's informal arrangements. Sheriff Pike stepped forward. Any of you folks interfering with legal survey work will be arrested for obstruction. That includes children. The threat hung in the air like smoke. The children had gone quiet, sensing danger the way animals do. Little Maria Santos pressed close to Maeve's skirts. Nobody's interfering, Cole said. We're just visiting, teaching the young ones their history, unless that's illegal now too. Pike's hand moved to his sidearm. Don't test me, Mercer. Your war hero days are long past. Nayeli rose from her rock, moving with deliberate grace to stand between the armed men and the children. She said something in Navajo, her voice carrying despite its softness. What did she say? Vane demanded. She said the spring remembers. Cole translated. It remembers who drank here with respect and who came only to take. Savage nonsense, Pike spat. Sheriff, Maeve said sharply. I'll thank you not to use such language in front of my students. And Mr. Vane, if you have legitimate claims, surely they can be examined in proper legal venues, not enforced at gunpoint against children. Vane's smile tightened. Of course, We're all civilized people here. Pike, lower your weapon. We've gotten what we came for." He touched his hat. "Good day, Miss O'Rourke. Children, do enjoy your lesson." After they left, the children remained subdued. The magic of the place had been tainted. Maeve felt rage building in her chest, rage she hadn't felt since watching factory owners dismiss injured workers, since seeing landlords evict immigrant families. "Can they really take the spring?" Tom asked Cole. "They can try," Cole said. "But trying and doing are different things." On the walk back, Nayeli fell into step beside Maeve. "You stood up to them," the girl said in accented but clear English. "Someone had to. Most don't. Most look away." Nayeli studied her with dark, serious eyes. "My grandmother says the spring chooses its protectors. Maybe it chose you." That evening, Maeve found Jonah Reed in his small office behind the courthouse, surrounded by ledgers and land documents. "Miss O'Rourke," he greeted her, rising politely. "How can I help you?" "I need to understand water law." She said, "Everything, Spanish grants, territorial rights, federal jurisdiction. What would it take to protect Blue Spring?" He leaned back, fingers steepled. "That's a mighty big question. Water law out here is a tangle of competing claims, Spanish, Mexican, American, tribal, and in mining interests, railroad expansion, and agricultural needs." He shook his head. "It's deliberately complex. Keeps lawyers rich and everyone else uncertain." "But there must be precedents, legal strategies." "Maybe, but it takes money to fight money. And Vane has plenty." Jonah paused. "Why do you care so much? You've been here barely a week." Maeve thought of the children's faces at the spring, of Maria Santos clutching her skirts. "Because someone has to. Because I've seen what happens when no one does." Jonah studied her for a long moment, then pulled out a thick volume. "All right, let's start with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo." They worked until the lamp oil ran low, Maeve taking careful notes. Water rights followed the doctrine of prior appropriation first in time. First in right, but Spanish and Mexican land grants complicated things. Indigenous claims, though morally sound, held little legal weight. Railroad companies had federal backing that could override local arrangements. "But here's something interesting," Jonah said, pointing to a passage. "Community use established before territorial organization can constitute a public trust. If we can prove the spring has been used continuously by the community since before New Mexico became a territory, we'd need witnesses, documents, and a judge willing to listen. Judge Martinez in Santa Fe is fair, but the circuit judge here, Wallace, he's ambitious. Wants a federal appointment. He won't rule against railroad interests." Maeve rubbed her tired eyes. "So we need evidence that would force even a corrupt judge to rule correctly. Or we need to change the game entirely." Jonah closed the book. "Miss O'Rourke, you should know asking these questions. Standing up to Vane, it's dangerous. Pike isn't just for show. People who oppose railroad expansion have accidents, get sick from bad water, find their property burned." "Are you trying to frighten me?" "I'm trying to prepare you. This isn't Boston. Law out here bends to whoever has the most force." "Then we need our own force," Maeve said. "The force of community, of truth." Jonah smiled sadly. "Noble sentiments, but nobility doesn't stop bullets." Walking back to the saloon, Maeve noticed a light in the livery stable. Through the open doors, she saw Cole working on a saddle, oil lamp casting shadows on the wall. She hesitated, then entered. "Burning the midnight oil?" she asked. He looked up, surprised. "Leatherwork's easier when it's quiet." He gestured to a stool. "Here you've been studying with Reed." "Word travels fast." Small town. He returned to his work, fingers moving expertly over the leather. "You should be careful. Vane doesn't like questions." So everyone keeps telling me. She watched his hands work those rough, capable hands. Were you really a cavalry scout? His movements stilled. 5 years, 3rd Regiment, scouted for miles against the Apache. And now I work cattle and try to forget. He met her eyes. We did things that seemed necessary then. Tracked families to exhaustion, led soldiers to waterholes where... He stopped. The spring I showed you today, I once led a column there. Families were camped, peaceful, but orders were orders. What happened? What always happened. The strong took from the weak. Women and children marched to reservations. Men who resisted. He returned to his work with unnecessary force. I quit after that. Came here. Been trying to protect what I once helped destroy. Is that why Nayeli trusts you? Her uncle was there that day. He survived. Somehow, they forgave what can't be forgiven. Cole set down his tools. So when I tell you Vane is dangerous, understand I've seen what men like him do when they want something. The uniform changes. The methods get more civilized, but the result's the same. Then we stop him. Cole almost smiled. You've been here a week. A week's long enough to know right from wrong. He studied her in the lamplight. You really mean that? I've been pushed around by powerful men my whole life. Factory owners who paid starvation wages, landlords who evicted families, school boards who said Irish need not apply. I'm tired of running. This isn't your fight. It is now. She stood, brushing off her skirts. Those children at the spring, they deserve better than to watch their birthright stolen by men with papers and guns. Deserving and getting are different things. Only if good people do nothing. Cole rose too, moving closer. For a moment, they stood in the circle of lamplight, dust motes dancing between them like tiny stars. You're going to cause trouble, he said softly. I certainly hope so. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps, or admiration. Then you'll need those boots I mentioned. Can't fight a range war in city shoes. Is that what this is, a war? Not yet, but Vane's not here for one water stop. Railroad wants to control the whole valley's water. Cattle, mining, agriculture. Control the water, control everything. Then we'd better get started, Maeve said, before he gains any more ground. As she turned to leave, Cole called after her. Miss O'Rourke, that first night the storm, you handled yourself well. Not many would have fought to secure those shutters. I've weathered worse storms than that. I'm beginning to believe it. Walking back through the darkness, Maeve felt something she hadn't experienced since leaving Boston Purpose. The stars above were brilliant in the clear desert air, and somewhere a coyote called to its pack. This land was hard and unforgiving, but it was also honest. It didn't pretend to be other than what it was. In Rosa's saloon, a few late drinkers huddled over cards. Maeve climbed to her room and lit her own lamp. She had work to do, letters to write, lessons to plan, water law to study. The forged letter that brought her here had been meant as a cruel trick, but perhaps there was providence in it after all. Someone had wanted to lure desperate people west, to use and discard them. Instead, they'd brought her to a place that needed exactly what she could offer, not just teaching, but the willingness to stand up and be counted. Tomorrow, she would continue her lessons. She would trace the old Spanish grants with Jonah. She would learn from Nayeli about the indigenous claims. And somehow, they would find a way to protect Blue Spring. The cowboy had said she'd cause trouble. She intended to make good on that promise. The smell of smoke woke her. Maeve jolted upright in her narrow bed, heart hammering. Through her window, orange light flickered against the darkness. She threw on her wrapper and rushed downstairs. Fire! Rosa was already in the street, organizing a bucket brigade. The teaching tent. Maeve's makeshift classroom, a large canvas tent behind the saloon where she'd been holding lessons, was ablaze. Flames licked hungrily at the wooden frame, consuming the precious books she'd gathered. The slate boards, the carefully drawn maps. "My books," she started forward, but strong hands caught her arms. "Too late," Cole said grimly. He'd appeared from nowhere, shirt hastily buttoned. "It's gone." They could only watch as her small collection of McGuffey readers, arithmetic primers, and geography texts turned to ash. Months of scrimping to buy them, weeks of lessons, gone in minutes. As the fire died to embers, Sheriff Pike sauntered up, making a show of examining the scene. "Shame about your tent, Miss O'Rourke. You really should be more careful with lamp oil." "There was no lamp," Maeve said through gritted teeth. "Lessons ended hours ago." "Well now, fires start all sorts of ways. Maybe some of those Mexican children were playing with matches. You know how they are." "How dare you!" Cole's hand on her shoulder stopped her. "Easy," he murmured. "That's what he wants." Pike smirked. "Course, if you were a proper teacher with proper facilities, might not have happened. But then, you're not really a teacher. Are you just some Irish girl playing pretend?" "Sheriff." Rosa stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Unless you're here to investigate, I suggest you move along. Some of us have real work to do." After Pike left, the small crowd dispersed. Maeve stood staring at the smoking ruins, tears of rage and frustration burning her eyes. "I saved what I could," a quiet voice said. Nayeli emerged from the shadows, arms full of partially charred books. "I saw men near the tent earlier, smelled kerosene." "Did you recognize them?" Cole asked. The girl hesitated, then nodded. "The surveyors, Vane's men." Jonah Reed arrived, still in his nightshirt. "Lord have mercy, Miss O'Rourke. I'm so sorry." He examined the saved books. Water damage, smoke, but some might be salvageable. "It doesn't matter," Maeve said flatly. "The message is clear. Stop teaching or worse will follow." "Will you?" Rosa asked. Maeve looked at the faces around her. Rosa's concern, Jonah's sympathy, Nayeli's watchfulness, Cole's carefully neutral expression. "No, but I won't endanger anyone else. I'll find another way." "Use the stable," Cole said abruptly. Everyone turned to stare. "The back section. It's empty, dry, and has thick walls, harder to burn without taking the whole building." "I couldn't." "You could and you will." His tone brooked no argument. "I'll move the feed stores tomorrow." Dawn was breaking by the time they'd salvaged what they could. Maeve sat in her room, staring at the pitiful pile of smoke-damaged books. A soft knock interrupted her despair. "Come in." Cole entered, carrying something wrapped in oilcloth. "Thought you might need these." He unwrapped a stack of books pristine, untouched by fire. "Been collecting them, wasn't sure what to do with them." She lifted one reverently. "Shakespeare, Milton, the Federalist Papers." Her voice caught. "Where did you—" "Here and there. Army sutlers, trading posts." He shifted uncomfortably. "Figured someone should use them proper. But you could read them yourself." A shadow crossed his face. "Never learned proper. Know enough to get by brands, trail markers, simple words. But books like these—" He shrugged. Maeve studied him with new eyes. This rough cowboy who handled rope and rifle with easy competence couldn't read the treasures he'd collected. "I could teach you, if you wanted." "I'm a bit old for schooling." "You're never too old to learn." She held out the Shakespeare. "We could start simple. The sonnets, maybe." He looked at the book like it might bite. "Don't know about poetry." "Then history, or philosophy, whatever interests you." "What interests me is keeping you alive long enough to teach those children." He turned to leave, then paused. "About tonight. You did right, not giving Pike the reaction he wanted. But this won't be the end. Vane plays a long game." "Then we'll play longer." After he left, Maeve opened one of the saved books. Inside the cover, a child's careful handwriting. Maria Santos, her book. The girl had been practicing, preparing to own her first real book. The fire had stolen that chance. No, Vane had stolen it. By noon, word of the fire had spread. Parents arrived at the saloon, some sympathetic, others worried. Would Miss O'Rourke continue teaching? Was it safe for their children? Safe, Maeve stood before them in Rosa's main room. Was it safe when your families came west, when they built homes in Apache territory, when they planted crops in drought years? She looked at each face. Nothing worthwhile is safe, but ignorance, that's the real danger. That's what men like Vane count on. What do you know about it? Challenged Samuel Morrison. A rancher. You've been here 2 weeks. Long enough to see what's at stake. Your children need education to protect what you've built, to read contracts before signing, to understand water rights and land law, to write letters to territorial authorities, to calculate fair prices and interest rates. She's right. Jonah spoke up. Every day I see folks cheated because they can't read the fine print. Father Miguel, the elderly priest, raised a gnarled hand. The stable will serve. God's first house was a stable, after all. One by one, they agreed. Not all some were too frightened or too deep in Vane's pocket, but enough. Enough to continue. That afternoon, Maeve and Cole worked to transform the stable's back section. He built rough benches while she organized the salvage supplies. They worked mostly in silence, but it was companionable now. "Why are you helping me?" she asked eventually. He paused in his hammering. "Maybe I'm tired of watching the strong take from the weak." "That's not an answer." "It's all the answer you're getting." As the sun set, Naomi appeared with surprising news. "I followed the surveyor's boot tracks, led to Campbell's freight office. He had a barrel of kerosene hidden there." "Campbell works for Vane sometimes," Cole said. "But knowing and proving are different things." "Then we need proof," Maeve said. "Jonah, could you check the freight manifests? See who's been ordering kerosene?" "I could, but Pike watches the records office." "Then we watch Pike," Rosa said, entering with coffee. "I've got girls who hear everything. Men talk when they drink." A plan began to form. They would document everything, every threat, every suspicious order, every surveyor's trespass. Build a case even a corrupt judge couldn't ignore. "It's dangerous," Father Miguel warned. "Vane has reaches far beyond Dry River." "So does justice," Maeve replied. "Eventually." That night, she held her first class in the stable. Only 5 children came, the others kept home by fearful parents. But 5 was enough. She taught them by lamplight, using charcoal on boards Cole had whitewashed. "Tonight we learn about maps," she announced. "How to read them, how to make them, how to understand what they really say." "Why maps?" asked Tom Bennett. "Because maps are power. They show who owns what, where water flows, where boundaries lie." She drew Blue Spring on the board. "Now, who can show me the old trails, the ones your families have always used?" As the children drew, Naisheli added details, seasonal water sources, sacred sites, hunting grounds, information not on any official map. "Good," Maeve said. "Remember, their maps show what they want to own. Our maps show what is." After class, Cole lingered. Smart, teaching them that. "Knowledge is the only weapon we have." "Not the only one." He touched his sidearm. "But better if we don't need others." They stood close in the lamplight. Maeve could smell leather and soap, see the fine lines around his eyes from years of squinting into desert sun. "I should go," he said, but didn't move. "Should you?" "Miss O'Rourke." "Maeve. Just Maeve." Maeve. Her name sounded different in his rough voice. "This thing between us, it complicates matters." "Everything's already complicated." "Fair point." He lifted a hand, almost touching her face, then dropped it. "You're not what I expected from a Boston schoolmarm. You're not what I expected from a cowboy." What did you expect? Someone simpler, less haunted, less kind. I'm not kind. No, then why the books, the stable, the constant watching to keep me safe? Maybe I'm just protecting my investment. Good teachers are scarce. She smiled. Liar. This time when he lifted his hand, he did touch her face, just a brush of calloused fingers against her cheek. You're going to be trouble. Maeve O'Rourke. I thought we'd established that. He leaned closer. For a heartbeat. She thought he might kiss her. Then hoofbeats pounded outside, and he stepped back, hand moving to his gun. Jonah Reed burst in. Found something. The freight manifests. Campbell ordered 5 barrels of kerosene last week. But also... He held up a paper. This was hidden in the files. A letter from Vane to Judge Wallace discussing removing obstacles to progress. That's it, Maeve breathed. That's proof. Proof of correspondence. Cole corrected. Not proof of arson, and Wallace won't prosecute himself, but the territorial governor might be interested. Jonah said, if we can get the evidence to Santa Fe. 2 days' ride through Vane's territory, Cole pointed out. He's got men at every way station. Then we make copies, Maeve said. Send multiple riders. Some will get through. You're talking about war, Cole said quietly. They fired the first shot, literally. Over the next days, they worked in secret. Rosa's girls gathered information. Nayeli tracked movements. Jonah copied documents. Father Miguel reached out to his network of missions. And Maeve taught. Every night. More children crept into the stable classroom. She taught reading and writing. Yes, but also critical thinking. How to question, how to verify, how to resist. Why should we trust any piece of paper? She asked them. Who wrote it? What do they gain? What evidence supports it? She was teaching them to be citizens, not subjects. Cole attended some classes, sitting in back, practicing his letters. His progress was slow but determined. One night, she found him struggling with a passage from Thoreau. Civil disobedience, he read haltingly. The duty to resist unjust laws. What do you think of it? Think Thoreau never faced down a man like Vane. Pretty words don't stop bullets. But they can stop bullets from being necessary, sometimes. He looked at her with those winter sky eyes. You really believe that? I have to. The net was closing. Pike had started posting men near the stable during classes. Vane's surveyors grew bolder, marking territory ever closer to town. The water in some outlying wells began to taste strange, not enough to prove poisoning, just enough to frighten. Then came the night when everything accelerated. Maeve was teaching late, showing the older students how to write formal letters of complaint. Cole had stepped outside to check the horses. He returned fast, face grim. Company coming, Pike and 6 men. Children, out the back, Maeve commanded. Quickly now. Nayeli, lead them home. The children melted into darkness just as Pike kicked open the stable door. Well, conducting another illegal assembly, Miss O'Rourke. Since when is teaching illegal, Sheriff? When it's done without proper permits, disturbing the peace, creating fire hazards. He smiled coldly. I'm placing you under arrest. On what charge? Cole stepped between them. Obstruction of justice will do for starters. Stand aside. Mercer? No. Pike's men spread out. Hands on weapons. The air crackled with potential violence. Cole, Maeve said quietly. It's all right. Like hell it is. Please. She touched his arm. This is what they want, an excuse for violence. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Cole stepped aside, though every line of his body screamed protest. Pike grabbed Maeve's arm roughly. Smart choice, though I doubt a night in jail will teach you proper respect. As they marched her away, Maeve looked back once. Cole stood in the stable doorway, fists clenched, looking like barely leashed lightning. The jail was a single stone building with 2 cells. Pike shoved her into one, iron door clanging shut with finality. "Get comfortable," he sneered. "Judge Wallace doesn't hold court for troublemakers until he's good and ready." Alone in the darkness, Maeve sank onto the narrow cot. Through the barred window, she could see stars, the same stars that had welcomed her to Dry River. Was it really only 2 weeks ago? She'd wanted to cause trouble. Well, she'd succeeded. But as she curled up on the rough blanket, she thought of Maria Santos practicing her letters, of Tom Bennett learning to calculate water volumes, of Nayeli mapping the ancient trails. The fire had burned her books. The jail held her body, but the knowledge she'd shared that was already spreading, impossible to contain. And somewhere in the night, she knew Cole was planning. Rosa was listening. Jonah was documenting. The community was stirring. Vane had made a mistake. He'd thought fear would scatter them like sheep. Instead, it was forging them into something harder, something that could fight back. The courtroom smelled of tobacco and false promises. Judge Wallace sat behind his bench like a vulture on a fence post, black robes hanging loose on his skeletal frame. Maeve stood before him, wrists still marked from the irons Pike had insisted on. "Miss O'Rourke," Wallace drawled, "you stand accused of inciting disorder, operating an illegal school, and resisting lawful authority. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor, and I request to see the specific statutes I've allegedly violated." Wallace's eyes narrowed. "You'll speak when spoken to." "With respect, I'm speaking to a question you asked." The small crowd murmured. Rosa sat in front, flanked by Father Miguel and several parents. Cole stood against the back wall, his presence solid as stone. Jonah Reed sat at a small table, papers spread before him he'd volunteered to assist with her defense. Furthermore, Jonah rose. "We move for dismissal. No proper charges have been filed. This is a hearing without foundation." Vane stood from his seat near the judge. "Your Honor, if I may, the railroad has significant interest in maintaining order. This woman has disrupted legitimate surveying work, spread seditious ideas, and encouraged others to challenge lawful property claims. I've taught children to read," Maeve said clearly. "If that threatens your business, perhaps you should examine your business." "Silence!" Wallace slammed his gavel. "Mr. Vane, do you have evidence of these disruptions?" Vane produced a paper with theatrical flourish. A signed statement from Mr. Campbell regarding threats made against railroad employees. "I've never spoken to Campbell," Maeve protested. "The statement says otherwise. And here, another paper affidavits claiming you've been teaching false history about water rights." Jonah stood again. "Your Honor, we haven't seen these documents. We have the right to examine evidence." "Rights," Wallace sneered. "You people always talking about rights." He glanced at Vane, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "I find the evidence compelling. Miss O'Rourke, you will cease all teaching activities immediately and pay a fine of $200. Failure to comply means 60 days imprisonment." $200, Rosa shot to her feet. "That's highway robbery." "Contempt of court, Mrs. Delgado. $10 or a night in jail." The courtroom erupted. Parents shouted protests. Father Miguel tried to calm them. In the chaos, Maeve noticed Cole's hand inch toward his sidearm. Then the doors burst open. A rider stumbled in, soaked to the skin, gasping, "Flash flood, the Canyon family's trapped." The room froze. Through the windows, they could hear it now, the roar of water where none should be. The spring snowmelt had come early and hard. "My children, Mrs." Santos screamed. "They went to gather wood near Skeleton Canyon." Wallace banged his gavel futilely. "Order! This court is still—" But people were already streaming out. Cole pushed through the crowd to Maeve. "Can you ride?" "Yes." "Then come on." He grabbed her arm, pulling her past a sputtering Pike. "Stop, she's in custody. Arrest me later," Cole shot back. "If those kids die because you kept us here, this town will hang you from your own jail." Outside, chaos reigned. The usually dry arroyos ran brown with churning water. Debris tumbled past entire trees, pieces of buildings, the detritus of upstream destruction. Cole whistled sharply. His paint horse and a sturdy mare appeared, trained to come at his call. He boosted Maeve into the saddle. "Stay close. These floods move fast." They rode hard toward Skeleton Canyon, joined by others vaqueros from the outlying ranches, townsmen on whatever mounts they could find. Even vain surveyors joined the rescue effort. Humanity overriding business in the face of nature's fury. At the canyon mouth, they found devastation. The flash flood had scoured the narrow passage, water still running hub-deep and violent. On a ledge halfway up the canyon wall, 5 children huddled, including Maria Santos and Tom Bennett. "The ledge won't hold." Nayeli appeared beside them, reading the rock. "See the crack-waters undermining it." Cole was already uncoiling his rope. "Too far for a throw from here. Someone needs to get closer." "The water's too strong," someone protested. "Not for a horse that knows floods." Cole turned to Maeve. "Can you handle the rope from here if I guide it across?" She nodded, taking the coil. Their eyes met a moment of understanding. He'd taught her basic rope work, but this would test every lesson. Cole urged his paint into the torrent. The horse fought for footing, water battering its sides. Halfway across, a log swept past, nearly unseating him. Maeve played out rope, keeping tension without pulling him off balance. "Almost there," Tom Bennett shouted from the ledge. Then the crack Nayeli spotted widened with a sound like thunder. The ledge tilted. Children screamed. "Now or never," Cole yelled. Maeve made a decision. Wrapping the rope around her saddle horn, she spurred her mare forward, creating an angle. "Nayeli, tell them to jump when Cole signals." The Navajo girl ran along the canyon edge, translating the plan. Cole reached the far side, securing his end to a boulder. A rope bridge now spanned the flood-thin, but hope itself. "One at a time," Cole commanded. "Smallest first." Little Ana Delgado went first, Rose's niece, barely 6 years old. She clung to the rope, feet skimming the water. Maeve kept her end taut, muscles burning. The crowd held its breath. Halfway across, Ana slipped. For a heart-stopping moment, she dangled by her hands alone. Then Nayeli was there, having somehow descended to a lower ledge, catching the girl's feet, guiding them back to the rope. One by one, they crossed. Tom Bennett went last, just as the ledge gave way entirely, tumbling into the flood with a crash that sent waves surging higher. "Move!" Cole shouted. They retreated to high ground as the water rose further. The children clung to their rescuers, sobbing with relief. Misses. Santos crushed Maria to her chest, tears streaming. Father Miguel led a prayer of thanksgiving. Even Wallace, who'd followed the crowd, seemed subdued by what they'd witnessed. That was well done. Vane approached Cole and Maeve. "Quick thinking." "No thanks to you," Cole replied coldly. "Your upstream diversions probably caused this. Channeling water where it doesn't belong creates pressure. Any fool knows that." Vane's expression hardened. "Careful, Mercer. Heroics today won't protect you tomorrow." As the flood slowly receded, the full damage became clear. Several outlying farms had lost everything. The road to Santa Fe was washed out, but no lives lost a miracle. That evening, the town gathered at the church. The planned meeting to discuss Maeve's case transformed into something else, a reckoning. "We can't go on like this." Samuel Morrison, the rancher who'd challenged Maeve earlier, stood. "These floods ain't natural. They're getting worse since the railroad started their improvements upstream." "Now hold on," Pike protested. "You can't blame..." Shut up, Harlan. Morrison's voice carried decades of authority. We know who pays your salary. Question is, what are we going to do about it? What can we do? Someone asked. Vane's got the law. Laws can change, Jonah said quietly. But only if we document everything, every flood, every diverted stream, every broken promise. And if we stand together, Rosa added, they can't arrest all of us. Can't they? Wallace had recovered his sneer. Federal marshals can be summoned. Territorial militia deployed. You people seem to forget progress is inevitable. So is justice, Maeve said. She stood, still damp and muddy from the rescue. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but water finds its level. Judge Wallace, and lies wash away eventually. Pretty words from a woman facing jail. Then I'll teach from jail. Stone walls can't stop ideas. Cole moved to stand beside her. She won't be alone. Anyone wants to arrest her. They go through me. And me, Rosa said. And me. Nayeli's young voice carried surprising weight. One by one, people stood. Not everyone fear still held some, but enough, more than enough. Wallace's face purpled. This is insurrection, Pike. Arrest them all. Pike looked at the crowd, at the determined faces of people who'd just risked their lives for each other. His hand moved to his gun, then fell. No, sir, not today. You're finished, Wallace sputtered. Your badge, your position. Keep them. Pike unpinned his star, set it on a pew. I'm done being your dog, Wallace. Done pretending the law means what you say it means. The judge stormed out, Vane following. At the door, the railroad man turned. This changes nothing. Progress, my kind of progress, is coming whether you like it or not. After they left, the meeting continued. Plans were made, committees formed. The flood had washed away more than topsoil, it had scoured away the town's paralysis. We need our own documentation, Father Miguel suggested. Church records go back 60 years. Spanish land grants, water usage, everything. I'll help organize it, Maeve volunteered. From your jail cell? Morrison asked wryly. Wallace can't jail her now. Jonah pointed out. Not after today. The territorial governor would hear about a judge imprisoning the woman who helped save children from drowning. Besides, Cole added, she never got to present her defense. That farce this morning wasn't a real trial. As the meeting dispersed, Maeve found herself walking with Cole toward the stable. The stars were coming out, reflected in standing water that turned the desert into a temporary mirror. Thank you, she said, for the rescue, for standing up in there. You'd have done the same. Would I? I'm not sure I'd have ridden into that flood. Sure you would. Just like you walked into a burning tent for books. Like you faced down men with guns using nothing but words. He paused. You've got a different kind of courage. Kind that lasts longer than moments. They reached the stable. Inside, the makeshift classroom stood ready, benches straight, boards clean. Tomorrow there would be students again. Tomorrow the work continued. Cole, Maeve turned to face him. What you said about going through you to arrest me. I meant it. I know. That's what worries me. He stepped closer, in the lamplight. She could see the weariness in his eyes, the weight of old ghosts and new choices. Can't help it, he said quietly. Spent too many years standing by, watching wrong things happen because they were legal, or ordered, or easier. Won't do it again. I'm not asking you to fight my battles. No, you're fighting everyone's battles. That's the problem. His hand brushed her cheek, coming away with dried mud. You're going to get yourself killed. Maeve O'Rourke. Maybe, but the children made it across the flood today. Is that enough, knowing they'll face worse tomorrow? It has to be. We save who we can today and fight for tomorrow. She caught his hand. That's all anyone can do. He studied their joined hands, his scarred and calloused. hers ink-stained but steady. "You're changing things here, changing people." "Is that bad?" "No, just dangerous." He squeezed gently. "For everyone who cares about you." The admission hung between them. In the distance, coyotes called not the usual lonely sound, but a chorus, pack reuniting after the flood. "I should go," Maeve said, but didn't move. "Should you?" It was an echo of their conversation nights ago, but weighted differently now. They'd faced death together today, saved lives together. Pretenses seemed foolish. "What do you want from me, Cole?" "Nothing you're not willing to give. Everything if you are." "That's not an answer." "Sure it is, just not a simple one." He released her hand but didn't step back. "We're not simple people, Maeve, not anymore. Maybe never were." "No," she agreed. "We're not." A horse whinnied in the darkness. The spell broke. Cole moved to check the animals, and Maeve began preparing tomorrow's lessons. But something fundamental had shifted between them, like earth settling after a flood. Later, alone in her room, Maeve wrote in her journal, "Today we faced nature's fury and human cruelty. We saved children and defied authority. We saw fear transform into courage, isolation into community. The water came violent and unexpected, but we stood against it together. Tomorrow, Vane will regroup. Wallace will scheme. The powerful will reassert their power. But tonight, we remember we are not helpless. We are not alone. And sometimes, that's enough to begin winning a war we haven't yet learned how to fight. The children cross the flood. If they can do that, we can do whatever comes next." Outside her window, the desert sang with temporary streams, nature redistributing what man had tried to hoard. It was a sound like justice, inevitable, patient, and absolutely unstoppable. The hot springs lay hidden in a box canyon 2 miles from Blue Spring, known only to locals who guarded its location like a secret. Steam rose from 3 natural pools carved into limestone, the water heated by deep earth forces, after days of flood cleanup and salvaging what they could. Cole had suggested Maeve needed to see this place. "For your shoulder," he'd said simply, noting how she favored her right side after hauling rope during the rescue. And now they sat on opposite rocks, feet dangling in the warm mineral water. Late afternoon sun slanted through the canyon walls, turning the steam golden. They'd ridden out alone, scandalous by proper standards. But Dry River had bigger concerns than propriety these days. "Rosa told me these springs have been used for healing since before the Spanish came," Maeve said, rolling her shoulder experimentally. The heat was indeed helping. "The Navajo and Pueblo have stories about them. Sacred places aren't meant for everyone." Cole skimmed his hand across the water's surface. "But Nayeli's grandmother said you'd earned the right." "Because of the teaching." "Because of the seeing. Most whites look at this land and see only what they can take. You see what is." They lapsed into comfortable silence. In the weeks since the flood, they'd developed this ease with each other, working side by side to rebuild damaged homes, sharing evening meals when he stayed late to help with lessons, gradually learning each other's rhythms. "Your reading's improving," Maeve observed. She'd caught him practicing with one of the saved books. Oh, had a good teacher. "Have present tense. You're not rid of me yet." "Wouldn't want to be." The admission hung between them, delicate as the steam. Maeve felt her cheeks warm from more than the spring's heat. "I should check your shoulder," Cole said, voice carefully neutral. "Make sure you didn't tear anything." She turned her back to him, loosening the collar of her riding shirt. His hands settled on her shoulders, careful and clinical at first, finding the knots of tension. She'd seen those hands, gentle horses, throw ropes with deadly accuracy, cradle flood-rescued children. Now they worked out the pain she'd been carrying, patient and sure. "There's scarring here," he said quietly, fingers tracing older marks on her shoulder blade. "These aren't from the flood." "Factory accident. Back in Boston, a loom through a shuttle caught me when I was 12. She tried to keep her voice light. One of many reasons they were happy to see me leave. Damaged goods. His hand stilled. Is that what you think you are? It's what they told me, repeatedly. They were fools. His touch resumed. Gentler now. These hands have done terrible things. Maeve, things that wake me at night, but you trust them anyway. Because I see what they do now, not what they did then. Most people can't separate the two. I'm not most people. No, he agreed softly. You're not. She turned to face him. Decision made, the questions, the careful distances, the dancing around what pulled between them. She was tired of it all. Cole, I know. He cupped her face with those rough, gentle hands. I know. Their first kiss tasted of mineral water and possibility. Gentle, then deeper. Years of loneliness seeking its opposite. When they parted, both breathing unsteadily. Maeve saw her own wonder reflected in his winter sky eyes. I didn't come here for this, she whispered. Neither did I. Came here for the water, stayed for the woman. She laughed, surprising herself. That's either poetry or the worst line I've ever heard. Bit of both. He traced her cheekbone with his thumb. What happens now? I don't know. I've never... She gestured helplessly. There were rules in Boston. Courtship protocols, chaperones. This isn't Boston. No, it's not, she considered. I suppose we make our own rules. Such as... Honesty, always. No pretending this is something it's not, or isn't something it is. Fair. What else? We keep fighting, together, separately, however we must. This, she gestured between them, doesn't change what needs doing. Agreed, and we see where it leads. No promises we can't keep. No rushing toward endings, happy or otherwise. He nodded slowly. I can live with those terms. Can you? Because I won't be some frontier wife who gives up everything she is for a man. I've seen what that does. My mother... She stopped, swallowed. I won't disappear into someone else's life. Wouldn't want you to. The woman I'm falling for teaches in a stable and faces down railroad barons. Why would I want to change that? The word falling settled between them like a gift. They stayed at the springs until the sun touched the canyon rim. Talking, not talking, relearning each other with this new permission. When Maeve shivered, the evening air sharp against wet skin, Cole wrapped his coat around her shoulders. We should head back, he said reluctantly. Be dark soon. As they dressed and prepared the horses, Maeve noticed Cole's careful movements, the way he kept watch even here, the soldier in him never fully at rest. Do you think Vane knows about this place? She asked. Not yet, but he will. Men like him always find what's hidden, try to own it or destroy it. Then we'd better enjoy it while we can. He helped her mount, hands lingering at her waist. Let your philosophy now grab happiness before it's stolen. Isn't it yours? Starting to be... They rode back through purple twilight, following game trails only Cole could see. Maeve felt changed, as if the mineral water had seeped into her bones, strengthening what was brittle. Or maybe it was simpler, maybe she was just no longer alone in the deepest sense. As they neared town, Cole pulled up. Best if we arrive separate. No need to give gossips ammunition. Since when do you care about gossip? I don't, but you're the teacher. You need respect to do your work. She reached across the space between horses, caught his hand. Thank you, for today, for understanding what I need. Still learning, he admitted, but I'm a decent student when motivated. They parted at the crossroads, him to the ranch, her to town. But the connection stretched between them now, invisible and strong as spider silk. At the saloon, Rosa took one look at Maeve and raised an eyebrow. Hot springs worked their magic? Something did. Uh-huh. Rosa poured 2 whiskeys. Sit. Tell me everything. Rosa. Don't Rosa me. You ride off with Cole Mercer, come back looking like the cat that found the cream, and expect me not to notice. She slid the glass across. Besides, this place needs some good news. Maeve sipped the whiskey, felt it burn warm down her throat. There's nothing to tell. Not really, just understanding. Understanding. Rosa laughed. Honey, I've run this establishment for 10 years. I know understanding when I see it. Question is, what comes next? I don't know, and that's all right. Is it because men like Cole, they don't love easy? Too much scar tissue, and women like you don't love small. Together, she shook her head. That's either disaster or something worth watching. It doesn't have to be either. It can just be, in my experience, nothing just is. Everything's connected. You pull one thread, the whole fabric moves. Rosa studied her. You ready for that? Before Maeve could answer, Jonah burst through the doors. We've got trouble. Vane's filed new papers with the territorial court. He's claiming prior Spanish grant rights to all water sources in the valley. The warmth of the afternoon evaporated. Can he do that? If he's got documentation, even forged papers take time to disprove. Jonah slumped at their table. And here's the worst news, Judge Martinez in Santa Fe, the fair one, he's been reassigned. The new judge is Wallace's cousin. Of course he is. Maeve felt fury building. So we're back to fighting corruption with corruption. Unless... Jonah hesitated. There might be another way, but it's dangerous. Tell me, the original Spanish grants are archived at the cathedral in Santa Fe. If we could examine them, compare them to whatever Vane's claiming. You mean steal them? Borrow, for authentication purposes. He spread his hands. It's not ideal, but playing by their rules means losing. Rosa poured Jonah a drink. The cathedral's guarded, and it's a 2-day ride through territory Vane controls. Then we need a distraction, Maeve said. Something to keep Vane's attention here while someone rides to Santa Fe. A damned good distraction. What did you have in mind? Maeve smiled grimly. A town meeting, public referendum on water rights, force everything into the open. Vane will never agree. He will if we make it about progress. His favorite word. Challenge him to prove the railroad brings prosperity. Make him defend his plans publicly. While someone slips away to Santa Fe, Jonah nodded. It could work. But who goes? They'd need to know Spanish, understand old documents. I'll go, a voice said from the stairs. Nayeli descended, quiet as always. My grandmother taught me the old writing, and I know trails your railroad friends don't. You're 17, Maeve protested. Old enough. My people were trading in Santa Fe before any of you were born. The girl's dark eyes held steady. This is my fight too. She's right, Rosa said. And she'd have better chance than any of us. Who suspects a Navajo girl of working for water rights? They planned late into the night. The town meeting would be in 3 days, enough time for word to spread. Not enough for Vane to fully prepare. Cole arrived near midnight, having heard rumors already spreading. It's risky, he said after hearing the plan. Vane's no fool. He'll smell a trap. Then we make it too tempting to resist. Maeve said, his vanity's his weakness, the chance to speechify about progress. To publicly crush opposition, he won't pass that up. Cole studied the map Jonah had drawn. I'll ride with Nayeli. Know some back trails? No, Maeve said firmly. You're needed here, visible. If you disappear, Vane will know something's planned. She's right, Nayeli agreed. I go alone. It's safer. Cole's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Then you take my horse. Sage knows those trails better than any. As the others dispersed to spread word of the meeting, Cole lingered. He and Maeve stood in the empty saloon, lamplight flickering between them. "That wasn't easy for you," she observed, letting her go alone. "Letting anyone go alone isn't easy. Nature of caring." He moved closer. "You sure about this, challenging Vane publicly?" "Someone has to stand up and say enough. Might as well be the troublemaking schoolteacher." "You're more than that now. You know that. Right, this town, these people they're starting to believe in justice, in fighting back, because of you. Because of us, all of us." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Still say you're going to get yourself killed. Still say it'll be worth it. Stubborn woman. Stubborn man." They stood close, not quite touching, letting the day settle. "Finally." Cole stepped back. "Get some rest. Next 3 days will test us all." After he left, Maeve climbed to her room and lit her lamp. She had speeches to write, arguments to craft, but first, she allowed herself one moment to press her fingers to her lips. Remembering, the cowboy's hands were rough with rope but gentle when they held her. Not all of her, not yet, but enough to know that when the time came, she would trust those hands with everything she was. For now, though, there was work to do. A town to rally, a fight to win. She dipped her pen and began to write. The town meeting had ended in chaos, as expected. Vane had speechified about progress, while Maeve countered with facts about displaced families and poisoned wells. The crowd had grown restless, then angry, then divided. In the confusion, no one noticed Nayeli slip away into the desert night, heading for Santa Fe. Now, 3 days later, Jonah Reed sat hunched over his desk in the records office, oil lamp burning low. He'd been searching for something, anything to support their case while waiting for Nayeli's return. "Found it," he breathed, pulling a leather-bound ledger from beneath a stack of mining claims. "The smoking gun." The door creaked open. Rosa entered, followed by Maeve and Cole. They'd been meeting in secret, varying locations to avoid Vane's watchers. "What is it?" Maeve leaned over his shoulder. "The county seal. The real one that went missing 6 months ago." Jonah opened the ledger. "Look at these entries. Withdrawals from the county equipment fund, signed by Sheriff Pike. Same dates as when the seal disappeared." "He stole it?" Rosa asked. "Or was ordered to. And here," Jonah flipped pages, "deposits into Pike's personal account. From consulting fees. Paid by guess who?" "Vane," Cole said grimly. "We need that seal," Maeve said, "if we can prove the forgeries." "Already ahead of you." Rosa smiled like a cat. "Had my girls keep Pike distracted at the saloon tonight. Told him Vane wanted to celebrate their victory at the town meeting. He's 3 sheets to the wind by now." Leaving his office empty, Cole understood. "Still breaking and entering?" "Not if we have a key." Jonah produced a brass key. "Duplicate. Made months ago when Pike first started acting suspicious. Never thought I'd need it." They moved through empty streets, keeping to shadows. The sheriff's office sat dark. Pike's snores audible from the saloon 2 blocks away. Jonah unlocked the door, and they slipped inside. "Check his desk," Maeve whispered. "I'll take the safe." "You can crack a safe." Cole raised an eyebrow. "Boston factory girls learn all sorts of skills, especially when the foreman locks up their wages." She knelt by the small iron safe, ear pressed to metal, fingers working the dial. They searched by lamplight, careful not to disturb anything obvious. Cole found ammunition requisitions that didn't match official records. Rosa discovered letters from Vane discussing removing obstacles, but no seal. "Got it," Maeve said as the safe clicked open. Inside lay the county seal, along with stacks of cash and documents. She lifted one. "Look at this. Practice forgeries. Different versions of the teaching contract that brought me here." "So Pike was practicing," Jonah said. "But why lure teachers west?" Cole's face darkened. Same reason they lure any desperate people. Create a crisis. Offer to solve it for a price. Bet Vane planned to rescue stranded women, indenture them to his company. Instead, he got me. Maeve pocketed the seal. His mistake. We need to photograph these. Jonah said, that box camera Father Miguel has. Footsteps outside. They froze. The door handle turned. Well, well. Vane entered, pistol drawn. 2 of his men flanked him. Breaking and entering. How disappointing, Miss O'Rourke. And here I thought you believed in the law. Funny thing about law. Maeve stood slowly. It requires legitimate authority, which you've been forging. Prove it. Vane's smile was cold. Oh, wait, you can't. Because you'll be in territorial prison. All of you. Blake, tie them up. As Blake moved forward, Rosa stumbled, clutching her chest. My heart, she collapsed dramatically, gasping. Blake bent to help. Rosa's knee came up hard, doubling him over. Cole moved simultaneously, disarming the second man with brutal efficiency. But Vane's gun stayed trained on Maeve. Enough move and she dies. Everyone stilled. Vane backed toward the desk, free hand reaching for the evidence they'd gathered. You people never learn. Progress doesn't stop for sentiment. The railroad will have this valley's water. I'll own every drop from here to... The window exploded. A rock sailed through, followed by children's voices. Fire, fire at the livery. Vane spun toward the window. Cole's thrown paperweight caught him temple high, dropping him like a stone. They heard running feet, shouts, the fire bell clanging. That's no distraction, Cole said, smelling smoke. That's real. They bound the unconscious men quickly and rushed outside. The livery stable blazed, flames already licking at the hayloft. Worse, the wind was pushing fire toward the row of wooden buildings that included the school stable. The horses! Someone screamed. Cole ran into the inferno without hesitation. Maeve grabbed buckets, organizing a brigade. Rosa directed water from the saloon's reserve barrels. Jonah worked to clear a fire break. One by one, Cole led terrified horses out, coat smoking, face blackened. Other men joined him, saving what livestock they could, but the fire spread faster than their buckets could douse. The school, Maria Santos pointed. Embers had caught the stable roof. Maeve's heart sank. All her salvaged books, the children's work, their maps and letters. Not again, she said fiercely. Not this time. She ran for the stable. Inside, smoke already hazed the air. She grabbed what she could, the precious Shakespeare. Student compositions, Nayeli's hand-drawn maps, arms full. She turned to find Cole blocking her exit. Drop them and move. No, these represent... He scooped her up bodily, books and all, carrying her out as the roof beam cracked overhead. They tumbled into the street as the stable collapsed, sending sparks skyward. You reckless, stubborn... Cole's tirade cut short as he saw she was laughing. Or crying, maybe both. I saved them, she gasped. This time I saved them? The fire raged another hour before controlled. When dawn came, half the commercial district lay in ashes, including Pike's office and all evidence except what Maeve had pocketed. Vane stood with Pike, who'd finally sobered up, surveying damage. Unfortunate, Vane said loudly. But perhaps a blessing. Now we can rebuild properly. Modern buildings. Railroad owned, of course. You burned it, Tom Bennett accused. We saw your men near the livery. Prove it, boy. Vane's smile was sharp. Oh, that's right. The sheriff's office burned. All those records. Such a shame. Not all, Jonah said quietly. He held up a leather satchel. County seal was in my office, for safekeeping. And these photographs of forged documents, they were at the church. Vane's face darkened. You. And I have the original Spanish grants, Nayeli said, appearing like smoke, dust-covered, exhausted. but triumphant. From Santa Fe Cathedral, they show Blue Spring and surroundings were deeded to the Pueblo in perpetuity, never legally transferred. Indigenous claims have no standing, Vane snarled. They do when ratified by treaty. Father Miguel emerged from the crowd, holding old papers. Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo guaranteed existing property rights, all existing rights. The crowd murmured. Understanding dawning, Vane looked between them, calculating. His hand inched toward his coat. Don't, Cole warned. Hand on his own weapon. This isn't over, Vane said. You think you've won? I have lawyers, judges, federal connections. I'll bury you in litigation until... Mr. Vane? A new voice, young but steady. Thomas Bennett stood with a group of children, all holding papers. We wrote letters to newspapers in Santa Fe, Denver, even Chicago, about what's happening here. Sent them yesterday. Told them everything, Maria Santos added. About the poisoned wells, the burned school, the fake teacher letters. Everything. Maeve felt her throat tighten. Her students, applying their lessons in ways she'd never imagined. Children's stories. Vane scoffed, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Maybe, Maeve said. But newspapers love stories, especially about railroad barons stealing from children and churches. Bad for business. That kind of story. You're finished here, Vane. Morrison, the rancher, stepped forward. This town's forming a water collective, legal incorporation, community ownership, and we've got the documentation to support prior claims. Thanks to Miss O'Rourke's teaching, someone called out. Showed us how to read the fine print. Vane looked around the crowd, seeing determination where fear once lived, his empire of intimidation crumbling like fire-weakened timber. This isn't over, he repeated, but the words lacked force. Pike, we're leaving. Not Pike, Cole said. He's under citizen's arrest for theft of county property, forgery, and suspected arson. You can't. We can. Rosa produced rope. And will, unless you'd prefer to join him. Vane backed away, his remaining men close. You'll regret this, all of you. After they left, the town stood silent, hardly believing. Then someone cheered. Others joined. Soon the whole street rang with celebration. Maeve felt Cole's hand find hers. You did it. We did it, all of us. But you lit the match, taught them they could fight. She looked at her students, faces bright with victory despite the smoking ruins. They taught themselves. I just gave them tools. Father Miguel raised his voice. Friends, we have much to rebuild, but first Sunday service will include prayers of thanksgiving. All are welcome, especially, he winked at Maeve, troublemaking school teachers. As the crowd dispersed to begin cleanup, Jonah approached. The territorial governor will need to review everything. There'll be hearings, real ones this time. We'll be ready, Maeve said. We have truth on our side. And good lawyers. Rosa added, I've contacted my cousin in Santa Fe. He loves cases like this. What about Pike? Cole asked. Federal marshals can transport him. I sent the telegraph already. Jonah smiled. Turns out the new marshal assigned to this region has strong opinions about corruption and about men who burn schools. By noon, salvage efforts were organized. The saloon, miraculously spared, became temporary headquarters. Maeve set up her newest classroom there, children helping sort rescued books. Miss O'Rourke. Naeli approached with a wrapped bundle. From Santa Fe. Inside was a new slate board and box of chalk. The cathedral sent them, said anyone who'd risked jail for teaching deserved proper supplies. Maeve hugged the girl. You rode all that way alone. You're the real hero here. No heroes, Nayeli said seriously. Just people doing what's needed. Grandmother says that's how the world changes. one necessary thing at a time. That evening, as sunset painted the burned buildings gold, Maeve stood with Cole surveying damage. The livery gone, the stable school destroyed. Pike's office still smoldering. "We lost a lot," she said. "Gained more." He pulled her close. Independence, hope, each other. She leaned into his strength. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, legal battles, rebuilding, probably retaliation from Vane's allies. But tonight, they'd won something precious. Not just water rights or legal victories, but the knowledge that ordinary people could stand against power and prevail. "I need to tell you something," Cole said quietly, "about what I did during the wars. Why I understand men like Vane." "You don't have to." "I do. If we're building something together, you need to know." He took a breath. "I led soldiers to water, always to water. Because controlling water meant controlling everything. I helped steal what couldn't be stolen, helped break what couldn't be fixed. And now you're helping heal it." "Trying. Every day. Trying." He looked at her. "Is it enough? You stood between guns and children, fought fire for neighbors, chose community over comfort." She touched his face. "Yes, it's enough." He kissed her there in the ruins, tasting smoke and promise. When they parted, stars were appearing in the darkening sky. "What's next?" he asked. "We rebuild. Stronger, smarter, together." "That's simple." "Nothing simple about it, but necessary." She smiled. "One necessary thing at a time." They walked back to the saloon hand in hand, past neighbors clearing debris, past children planning their new school, past Father Miguel blessing the work. Dry River would rise from these ashes, transformed no longer a town that accepted what was forced upon it, but one that claimed its own destiny. The seal that had brought Maeve here with lies now rested in Jonah's safe, ready to stamp truth onto new documents. Water would flow as it always had, but now legally protected by community will. And in Rosa's saloon, by lamplight, a Boston schoolteacher and a former cavalry scout bent together over territorial maps, planning a future neither could have imagined when this story began. The cowboys' hands were rough with rope, but gentle when they traced the roots of rivers, marking all the places water ran free. The morning of the hearing dawned clear and bright, the kind of desert day that made the sky seem endless. Judge Theodore Wallace had refused to recuse himself, but the territorial governor had mandated an open-air trial at Blue Spring itself to see the disputed land firsthand. The order read, half of Dry River made the journey. Wagons kicked up dust clouds as families traveled together, children riding alongside, everyone dressed in their best clothes. This wasn't just a legal proceeding anymore, it was a reckoning. Maeve rode with Cole, her satchel heavy with documents the Spanish grants Nayeli had retrieved, photographs of forged papers, sworn affidavits from longtime residents. Behind them, Rosa drove a wagon loaded with ledgers and witnesses. Jonah had gone ahead to ensure proper legal protocols were observed. "Nervous?" Cole asked, noting her tight grip on the reins. "Terrified," she admitted, "but ready." The spring revealed itself like a secret, green cottonwoods marking its presence against red rock. Already a crowd had gathered not just from Dry River but neighboring settlements, drawn by word of the water rights battle. A makeshift court had been established near the largest pool, with tables for the competing parties and benches for spectators. Judge Wallace sat like a carrion bird in his black robes, clearly displeased by the outdoor setting. Beside him, a court reporter prepared his instruments. Federal Marshal Samuel Hayes stood to one side, the honest lawman Jonah had mentioned. Come to ensure order. Vane had brought his own army, 6 lawyers from Santa Fe, Peru, surveyors, and enough hired muscle to intimidate. He wore an expensive suit and a confidence that suggested fixed outcomes. "All rise." The bailiff called. The matter of Blue Spring water rights, contested between the Dry River Community Trust and the Mountain Pacific Railroad Company. Wallace gavelled proceedings open with obvious reluctance. Mr. Vane, as plaintiff, you may present your case. Vane's lead attorney, a silver-tongued man named Beaumont, stood. Your Honor, we present documentation proving prior Spanish grant to these water rights, transferred through proper channels to my client. He produced papers with flourish, old-looking, properly aged, bearing what appeared to be authentic seals. Maeve's heart sank. These forgeries were masterful. Furthermore, Beaumont continued, the railroad's development plans will benefit all residents. Progress demands sacrifice, but rewards those who embrace it. For an hour, they built their case. Maps showing projected rail lines, economic projections, even testimony from bought witnesses claiming the community had agreed to transfers. Then Pike was brought forward in shackles. Marshal Hayes had arrested him that morning on federal charges, but he could still testify. Tell the court, Beaumont prompted, about the community's agreement to transfer water rights. Pike, sweating despite the cool morning, glanced at Vane. There was general agreement. People understood progress was coming. And Miss O'Rourke's interference. She stirred up trouble, got folks riled with wild stories about poisoned wells and such. No further questions. Jonah rose for cross-examination. Mr. Pike, are you currently under federal indictment for forgery? That's unrelated. Is it this seal on Vane's documents? Jonah held up the evidence. Is it the same county seal you stole 6 months ago? I never. The seal found in your safe along with practice forgeries. Pike's mouth worked soundlessly. And these deposits to your account, corresponding to dates when official documents went missing? I plead the fifth. Pike mumbled. In a civil proceeding, Wallace snapped. Answer the question. Trapped. Pike crumbled. Vane said it was for the greater good, that only a few Mexican families and Indians would be displaced, said the town would thank us when the railroad brought prosperity. The crowd murmured. Vane's lawyers huddled, whispering urgently. Our turn, Jonah said quietly to Maeve. Ready? She stood, forcing her voice steady. Your Honor, the Dry River Community Trust calls its first witness, Nayeli Bigay. The young woman took the stand with quiet dignity. Through her, Maeve established the continuous use of Blue Spring by indigenous peoples, the Spanish recognition of those rights, and the treaty obligations that followed. These maps. Nayeli displayed her hand-drawn charts. Show water sources as my people have known them for generations. Not ownership stewardship, the spring chooses its guardians. Folklore has no legal standing. Beaumont objected. But treaties do, Maeve countered. She introduced the cathedral documents, walking through the chain of title. The Spanish grant specifically preserved indigenous use rights. Those rights were never extinguished, never sold, never transferred. Witness after witness told their stories. Rosa testified about her family's century-old claim. Morrison spoke of grazing rights established by his grandfather. Father Miguel, despite his age, traveled from town to share church records dating to 1794. Then came the children. Your Honor, Maeve said, these young citizens have something to say. Wallace scowled. Children have no standing. But their letters do. Thomas Bennett stepped forward with a box. Copies of everything we sent to newspapers, about the fires, the poisoned wells, the fake teaching positions. Hearsay, Beaumont protested. Published accounts, Jonah corrected. Producing newspapers. The Denver Post, the Santa Fe New Mexican, even the Chicago Tribune picked up the story. Railroad baron accused of poisoning children's wells. Vane's composure cracked. Those are lies. Then sue for libel. Maeve suggested calmly. Of course, that would require proving the allegations false. Under oath, with evidence. The trial continued past noon, As afternoon shadows lengthened, Cole was called to testify. Maeve watched him take the stand, seeing him steel himself. State your name and occupation. Cole Mercer, ranch foreman, former cavalry scout, 3rd Regiment. Mr. Mercer, Jonah began carefully. You have unique knowledge of water rights in this region. I do. Cole's voice carried across the natural amphitheater. I spent 5 years leading military expeditions through this territory. My job was identifying water sources for control. Control. Deny water. You control movement. Control movement. You control people. He looked directly at Vane. I've seen what happens when water becomes a weapon. Families dying of thirst while soldiers guard the springs. Children. He stopped, composed himself. I left the army because I couldn't be part of that anymore. And now I protect what I once helped destroy. This spring, Blue Spring, it's life itself for this valley. Not just water, but what water means. Community, survival, hope. Your witness, Jonah said to Beaumont. The lawyer approached carefully. Mr. Mercer, you admit to participating in what some might call war crimes. I admit to following orders I now know were wrong. And we should trust the word of such a man. Cole met his gaze steadily. A man who's done wrong and tries to make amends. Yes, a man who's never admitted wrong, who takes what isn't his and calls it progress. He looked at Vane. That man you should never trust. The crowd stirred. Even Wallace seemed affected by the raw honesty. As the sun touched the canyon walls, turning them blood red, final arguments began. Beaumont spoke of progress, of the greater good, of the railroad's legal rights. He was polished, professional, persuasive. Then Maeve rose for the community's closing. Your Honor, she began, walking to the spring's edge. We've heard a lot today about progress. But what is progress? Really, is it stealing water from those who've tended it for generations? Is it burning schools to silence teachers? Is it poisoning wells to force sales? She dipped her hand in the spring, letting water run through her fingers. This water has flowed here since before any of us drew breath. The Navajo and Pueblo knew it. The Spanish recognized it. The Mexican government confirmed it. And now we Americans, we have a choice. She turned to face the crowd. We can be the kind of Americans who honor agreements only when convenient, who take by force what can't be bought, who call theft progress and violence development. Her voice rose, carrying to the farthest listeners. Or we can be Americans who keep faith with the past while building the future, who understand that real progress means lifting everyone, not climbing on the backs of the dispossessed, who know that water like justice flows strongest when it flows for all. She produced the fake teaching contract that had brought her west. I came here because of a lie, a forged document promising something that didn't exist. But I stayed because of a truth that people standing together can resist power, can demand justice, can protect what matters. This spring doesn't belong to any one person or company. It belongs to the community, all of it, indigenous peoples with ancient claims, Spanish and Mexican families with centuries of use, Anglo settlers who've worked this land, even. She smiled slightly. Irish school teachers who found home in the desert. She returned to her seat. The law's clear. Prior use, continuous occupation, treaty obligations, they all point to one conclusion. Blue Spring belongs to the people, not some of them, all of them. Silence stretched across the gathering. Then Father Miguel began to clap. Slowly. Others joined. Soon, applause thundered off the canyon walls. Wallace gavelled furiously. Order, I'll have order. When quiet returned, he spoke through gritted teeth. The court will consider the evidence. We're in recess until... Your Honor. Marshal Hayes stepped forward. Before you rule, you should know that Mr. Vane is under federal investigation for fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. Any ruling that rewards criminal behavior would be carefully reviewed. Wallace's face went white. He looked at Vane, at the marshal, at the expectant crowd. His career ambitions warred visibly with reality. "The court," he said finally, each word dragged out. "Fines for the defendants. The Dry River Community Trust has established prior and continuous use rights to Blue Spring. The railroad's claims are dismissed." The crowd erupted. People hugged, cried, cheered. Children splashed in the spring. Vane stood frozen, unable to believe his defeat. "This isn't over," he shouted over the celebration. "I'll appeal, I have connections." Mr. Vane. Marshal Hayes produced shackles. "You're under arrest. Federal charges. Your lawyers can explain on the way to Santa Fe." As they led him away, Vane locked eyes with Maeve. "You've ruined everything." "No," she said quietly. "I've helped save everything." As sunset painted the spring golden, the community celebrated. Food appeared from wagons, guitars emerged, and soon the legal battlefield became a festival. Children played in the shallows while adults planned the Water Trust's future. Cole found Maeve sitting on a rock, watching it all. "You did it. We did it." She leaned into him. "All of us together." "That closing argument, where'd you learn to speak like that?" "Factory strike meetings. Boston abolitionists, Irish revolutionaries in exile." She smiled, and maybe a little from a cavalry scout who testified to hard truths. He pulled her close. "What now?" "Now we build real schools, fair water distribution, a future where children like Maria and Tom never have to fight for what should be theirs by right. And us." She looked up at him, seeing tomorrow in his eyes. "We'll figure it out, day by day, spring by spring." Naili approached with a traditional water gourd. "For the spring's protectors," she said formally, offering it to them. "Drink and be blessed." They shared the gourd, the water cold and sweet. Around them, their community celebrated into the night. Anglo and Mexican and indigenous voices joined in songs that echoed off ancient rocks. The battle for Blue Spring was won. The war for justice would continue. But tonight, beside free-flowing water under infinite stars, the people of Dry River claimed their victory. And two unlikely lovers, brought together by lies but bound by truth, began planning a future as intertwined as cottonwood roots seeking water in the desert. 6 months had passed since the trial at Blue Spring. The desert bloomed with unusual abundance after winter rains, as if the land itself celebrated its freedom. Maeve stood in the doorway of the new schoolhouse, a proper adobe building with real windows and a bell tower, watching her students work on their compositions. "Miss O'Rourke," Maria Santos called out. "How do you spell justice?" "Sound it out," Maeve encouraged. "What letters do you hear?" As Maria carefully wrote, Maeve marveled at the changes. The Dry River Community Trust had become a model for other towns fighting railroad encroachment. Letters arrived daily asking for advice, for copies of their legal documents, for hope. "Admiring your handiwork," Cole's voice came from behind her. She turned, still feeling that flutter when she saw him. "Our handiwork. None of this would exist without everyone's efforts." "Maybe, but it took a certain stubborn schoolteacher to light the fire." He held up an envelope. "Letter from the territorial governor. Addressed to Mrs. Maeve Mercer." Heat rose in her cheeks. "We're not married yet." 3 days, he reminded her. "Unless you're having second thoughts." "Never." She took the letter, recognizing the official seal. What could he want? "Open it and see." Inside, she found an appointment. The territory of New Mexico was creating a new position, Superintendent of Rural Education. Her name had been put forward by Judge Martinez, Father Miguel, and several newspaper editors who'd followed their story. "Cole," she breathed. "They want me to help establish schools across the territory, to train teachers, develop curricula that respect all cultures, Spanish, Anglo, Indigenous. It's what you've been doing here, but bigger. It would mean travel, being away sometimes. Good thing you're marrying a man who knows how to track. He pulled her close. Maeve, this is what you're meant to do. What we fought for, spreading it beyond Dry River. She kissed him, there in the schoolhouse doorway where any student might see, let them. Love wasn't something to hide. Mrs. Mercer. Nayeli appeared, breathless from running. Come quick. Rosa's gone into labor. They rushed to the saloon, where Dr. Chen, newly arrived from San Francisco to serve the growing community, was attending Rosa. The widow had shocked everyone by marrying Jonah Reed 4 months ago, and shocked them again by proving that life could bloom at any age. About time you got here, Rosa gasped between contractions. Can't have my wedding attendant missing the main event. Hours later, as rain began to fall, gentle spring rain, not the violent floods of old Rosa's daughter, entered the world. They named her Esperanza, Hope. Look at that, Rosa whispered, exhausted but radiant. Born into a free town, with clean water and good schools, she'll never know what we went through to secure it. She'll know, Jonah said softly, cradling his daughter. We'll teach her, so she can protect it for her children. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparations. The whole town threw itself into wedding planning with enthusiasm that would have scandalized proper Boston society. Mexican women taught Maeve to make tortillas for the feast. Nayeli's grandmother gifted her a turquoise necklace blessed with old prayers. Even Morrison, the initially skeptical rancher, contributed a side of beef. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Maeve stood in Rosa's room, wearing a simple but elegant dress they'd ordered from Santa Fe. Not white, she was too practical for that, but a soft sage green that complemented the desert landscape. You sure about this? Rosa asked, nursing Esperanza. Marriage changes things. Everything changes, Maeve replied. The question is whether we guide the change or let it happen to us. Spoken like a teacher. Rosa shifted the baby. You know Cole's planning to run for Sheriff Morrison and others have been pushing him. Maeve smiled. A sheriff who reads law books instead of burning them. Imagine that. Father Miguel performed the ceremony beside Blue Spring. The whole community gathered under cottonwoods. Cole waited at the makeshift altar, wearing his best suit but still looking more comfortable on horseback than in church clothes. His eyes never left Maeve as she approached. Dearly beloved, Father Miguel began. We gather at this sacred spring to witness something precious, 2 lives joining like streams that merge into a stronger river. The vows were simple, heartfelt. Cole's voice caught when he promised to support her dreams as fiercely as his own. Maeve's hands shook as she slipped the ring on his finger, a band made from silver mined ethically from claims the trust now managed collectively. In my culture, Nayeli said during the blessing, water witnesses all promises. This spring has seen oath-breaking and truth-telling. Today it sees love choosing hope over fear. When Father Miguel pronounced them married, Cole kissed Maeve with a tenderness that drew cheers and a few good-natured whistles. They turned to face their community ranchers and clerks, Mexican farmers and Irish immigrants, indigenous families and former soldiers, all united by struggle and triumph. The celebration lasted well into the night. Tables groaned under food representing every culture in the valley. Children ran between dancers. Old guitars appeared, and songs in 3 languages filled the air. No honeymoon trip, Thomas Bennett asked, now 15 and Maeve's assistant teacher. This is our honeymoon, Maeve gestured to the celebration. Being here with all of you, though, she smiled at Cole. We might sneak away to the hot springs later, as if summoned by her words. Cole appeared with 2 horses saddled. Ready, Mrs. Mercer. They rode out under stars, leaving the celebration's warmth for the desert's vast quiet. At the hot springs, they found someone had been there, first blankets laid out, a basket of food, letters weighted with stones. Rosa, Maeve laughed, reading the note. She says it's bad luck not to consummate properly. Wouldn't want bad luck, Cole agreed solemnly, then grinned, race you to the water. Later, floating in the warm mineral pool under impossible stars, Maeve thought about the journey that brought her here. A forged letter meant to trap her had instead led to purpose, community, love. Regrets? Cole asked, reading her contemplative mood. None. Only that it took so long to find you. He pulled her close. When I think what might have happened if you'd believed their lies. If you'd run back to Boston. But I didn't. We're here. That's what matters. They talked about the future, the schools she'd help build, the fair enforcement he'd bring to law, the children they might raise. Not fairy tale dreams, but real plans, rooted in struggle and watered by hope. The railroad will come eventually. Cole said, different company, better terms, but it'll come. Let it. We'll be ready. The trust is strong, the water rights secured. We'll adapt without losing ourselves. That why you took the superintendent job, to spread that strength? Partly, but mostly because I remember being that girl in Boston, told she was worth less because of where she came from. If I can help even one child know their worth, you'll help thousands. He kissed her temple. My wife, the revolutionary. My husband, the reformed soldier. We're quite a pair. The best kind, broken in ways that make us stronger together. When they returned near dawn, the celebration had mellowed to small groups around fires, sharing quieter stories. Rosa rocked Esperanza, humming an old Mexican lullaby. Jonah studied legal precedents by lamplight, preparing for his new role as circuit judge. Nayeli sketched, always sketching, accepted now to the Santa Fe Art Academy. Look at them all, Maeve whispered. Free, safe, building. Because someone taught them they could. Cole dismounted, then helped her down. Come on, teacher, sun's rising. They climbed to the hilltop cemetery where markers honored all who'd built Dry River Spanish settlers, Apache traders, Anglo pioneers, Chinese rail workers. A new stone marked Pike's grave. He'd died in prison. But the town had voted to bring him home. Even failed men deserved remembrance. As the sun painted the desert gold, Maeve spoke words she'd prepared. We gather our strength from those who came before. We hold it in trust for those still coming. Water flows, seasons turn, people change, but justice, once rooted, runs deeper than any spring. Amen, Cole said softly. They stood together, watching their town wake smoke rising from chimneys, roosters crowing, children's voices carrying on clean air. The railroad would come, as Cole said. Droughts would test them, politics would shift, but the foundation was laid in bedrock now. What are you thinking? Cole asked. That I came here to teach reading and writing, but I learned the most important lesson myself, which is that home isn't where you're from. It's what you build with others, what you protect, what you pour yourself into like water into thirsty ground. And this is home. This is home. They walked back hand in hand as Dry River woke to its new day. The school bell rang, Tom Bennett practicing for Monday. The smell of baking bread drifted from the new bakery. At the community well, women gathered to draw water and share news. Vane was serving 5 years in federal prison. The Mountain Pacific Railroad had dissolved in scandal. Other water thieves had taken note. Communities across the Southwest were organizing. Inspired by Dry River's example, Mrs. Mercer, Maria Santos ran up, braids flying. Look, I wrote my first whole story. Maeve knelt to read the careful words. Once there was a spring that chose its people. Bad men tried to steal it, but the people stood together. Now the water runs free forever. The end. That's beautiful. Maria, it's our story, isn't it all of ours? Yes, Maeve said, throat tight. All of ours. As the child ran off, Cole squeezed Maeve's hand. Forever's a long time. Good thing we're stubborn. Good thing indeed. They entered their new home, a small adobe near the school, built by community hands as a wedding gift. Simple but solid, with windows facing the sunrise and a porch for evening talks. On the table lay Maeve's teaching materials for the territorial position, maps marked with communities needing schools, letters from teachers seeking guidance, the work of a lifetime, spreading ripples from this one spring. No regrets, Cole asked again, seeing the magnitude of the task. None, Maeve said firmly. We fought for this valley's water. Now we fight for its future. One student, one school, one community at a time. Together. Always together. Outside, church bells rang, calling people to Sunday service. But the real worship had already happened in the choosing to stay, to build, to love against all odds. The cowboy's hands were rough with rope, but gentle when they held her. Finally and fully. In the home they'd claimed through courage. In the town they'd saved through solidarity. Beside the spring that flowed eternal and free. Justice, like water, had found its level at last. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope you enjoyed following Maeve and Cole's journey as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please leave a comment below, and let's connect over our shared love of these frontier tales. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Wild West Night, give this video a like, and hit that hype button to help more people discover these stories of courage, justice, and romance in the American West. Until next time, partners.